Today I bring you a fresh, major development, one that may well mark a turning point in the long legal saga surrounding Nnamdi Kanu. If you value staying informed, hit the like button and subscribe to stay updated. What just happened on Friday, November 28, 2025, the Court of Appeal in Abuja struck out Kanu's appeal, a suit in which he alleged that his fundamental rights were violated while in the custody of Department of State Services, DSS, and challenged other related aspects including alleged denial of medical care, dignity, and freedom of religion. The three-member panel of justices delivered a unanimous judgment. Their reasoning: the court held that with Kanu now convicted on November 20th and sentenced to life imprisonment by a federal high court in Abuja, the appeal had lost its relevance. In legal parlance, the case had become academic. To put it plainly, now that Kanu is already jailed and serving his sentence at a correctional facility, the court docket indicates he is at the Sokoto Correctional Centre. Any attempt to challenge his past detention conditions or custodial treatment was deemed redundant. Is this the end of his legal fight? Well, at least this particular battle, yes. The appeal court's decision effectively closes this chapter. The rights violation suit has been nullified. However, end may be too definitive a word. While this suit is gone, it does not automatically erase his conviction or sentence. The rights violation appeal was separate from the main criminal case that found him guilty of terrorism and sentenced him to life. So what does this mean going forward? For supporters and critics alike, it means any hope of using rights violation arguments to secure release or transfer is now significantly weakened. The legal system has indicated that once conviction and custody have been settled, related rights suits may be disregarded as moot. For the authorities, this ruling reinforces their position once the court has declared guilt and handed down a sentence. Accompanying claims about past detentions lose their force. But for many Nigerians watching this saga, the judgment may deepen frustration or fears over justice, rule of law, and possibly what next. Will there be new legal maneuvers, fresh appeals on other grounds, international human rights petitions? We must watch closely. Right now, the bottom line is simple. The Court of Appeal has shut the door, at least for now, on Kanu's bid to use alleged abuses in detention as a means of overturning or weakening his conviction. Why did the court do that? Because, as the judgment explained, once a person is convicted and remanded in prison, in this case at the Sokoto Correctional Centre, any earlier claims about how he was treated in pre-trial detention tend to lose their immediate legal relevance. The court stated that the appeal had become academic. Importantly, the appeal being struck out does not mean that the allegations of rights violations were ruled false, only that, given the changed circumstances, conviction and sentencing, the court could no longer grant the reliefs he had sought: transfer of detention, independent medical review, etc. So, is this the end of his legal fight? For the rights violation claim, yes, likely that chapter is closed. The court has effectively neutralized that line of defense. But this doesn't automatically remove or reverse his conviction or sentence. That remains a separate legal track. His legal team may still explore other avenues, appeals on different grounds, procedural challenges, or possibly petitions beyond Nigeria. That possibility remains even if this particular suit is dead. For public interest and civil rights watchers, this ruling may raise broader questions. If a rights violation claim can be declared academic after conviction, what does that mean for detainees whose treatment during pre-trial detention is genuinely inhumane? Is there a real mechanism for accountability beyond criminal cases? What does this mean for Nigerians watching this saga? For supporters of Kanu, It may feel like a signal that the justice system will no longer entertain complaints tied to pre-conviction treatment once a conviction is secured, a concern for anyone who fears detention without proper safeguards. For the state and its agencies, the judgment probably offers respite. It shields them on this case at least from further litigation over alleged custodial abuses that happened before trial. For observers of human rights and rule of law in Nigeria, it could set a precedent, a warning that rights enforcement suits may quickly lose traction once a criminal conviction is delivered, regardless of the merits of the initial complaints. But remember, the story may not end here. Legal fights often evolve. New petitions may emerge. International attention and human rights pressure may still play a role. So yes, in purely legal technical terms, this part of the battle seems done. But in terms of politics, public opinion, human rights scrutiny, and the long shadow of the whole affair, the conversation is far from over. By striking out the appeal, Court of Appeal in Abuja has essentially locked the door on Kanu's attempt to use alleged rights violations in custody, including claims of denial of medical care, lack of dignity, and interference with his religious freedom, as a basis to challenge or alter his situation. The court's reasoning was straightforward, with Kanu already convicted on terrorism charges by a federal high court and serving a life sentence at the Sokoto Correctional Centre. Any further relief for alleged pre-trial abuses was no longer legally relevant. What this means, and why it matters, is that courts may now be signaling that fundamental rights suits tied to detention conditions may lose traction once a conviction is secured. This could reduce opportunities for detainees to seek redress for alleged mistreatment, raising serious questions about accountability. But don't assume this is the absolute end of the road for Kanu. There remain potential legal and strategic options open to him and his team. First, his defense may challenge the conviction itself. There are reports his camp is exploring whether the law under which he was charged remains valid. They might also pursue appeals on procedural or constitutional grounds, though those are likely to face heavy judicial resistance after the latest outcome. On the political and human rights front, civil society, international observers, and rights groups may still scrutinize how the case was handled, particularly the detention conditions, trial fairness, and overall treatment. For many Nigerians watching, supporters and critics alike, this may deepen anxieties about fairness and justice in the system. It poses larger questions. If custodial rights claims can be dismissed as academic once conviction happens, then how effectively can individuals challenge abuses while still awaiting trial? For the state and its agencies, this ruling provides relief. It removes the immediate legal pressure tied to Kanu's prior detention conditions. But the larger challenge remains for justice to be trusted. The system must remain open to accountability, even or especially after conviction. As things stand now, this chapter of legal contest between rights claim and custody status appears closed. Yet, given the high stakes for Kanu, for the region, for Nigeria's rule of law, the story is far from over.